The galaxy made a fatal mistake. They thought humans were weak because our skin is soft. When the Xarcon Empire landed on Terra Nova, they laughed at us. They were 10 feet tall, made of living rock, and protected by shields that could stop a nuclear bomb. Our bullets bounced off them like rain. Our tanks were crushed like toys. They told Commander Jax to surrender or die. They thought they were invincible gods, but they forgot one simple rule of physics: everything has a breaking point. The humans stopped firing their guns. Instead, they turned on a machine deep underground. A machine that didn't shoot bullets, but shot sound. The aliens stopped laughing when the ground began to hum. They stopped laughing when their indestructible shields shattered. And they started screaming when their own bones began to crack from the inside out. The Xarcon wanted a war. Fine. But they didn't know that humans were crazy enough to shake their own planet apart just to win. The alarm screamed across the human colony of Terra Nova. It was a loud, ugly sound that woke everyone up. Commander Jax put on his helmet and ran to the command center. He looked at the big screens on the wall. His heart beat very fast. The sky above the colony was usually a beautiful blue. But today, it was dark. Huge black ships covered the sun. "They are here," a soldier yelled. "The Xarcon Empire has arrived." Everyone in the galaxy knew the stories about the Xarcon. They were not normal aliens. They were monsters. They stood 10 feet tall. Their skin was not soft like human skin. It was made of thick, gray rock. They looked like walking mountains. They believed they were gods because nothing could hurt them. Commander Jax grabbed his radio. "Open fire," he shouted. "Do not let them land. Give them everything we have." On the dusty ground outside the city, the battle began. 1,000 human soldiers fired their rifles. Heavy tanks fired big explosive shells. Missiles flew through the air with trails of fire. It looked like enough power to destroy a whole mountain. The humans watched and waited for the aliens to fall, but then, the smoke cleared. Commander Jax gasped. The Xarcon soldiers were still standing. They were not dead. They were not even hurt. A strange, purple light glowed around their bodies. It was their famous technology, the gravity shield. The human bullets hit the purple light and stopped instantly. They fell to the ground uselessly. Clink. 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 The big missiles hit the invisible wall and exploded, but the aliens just stood there. There was not even a scratch on their rock armor. The aliens started to laugh. It was a terrible sound. Then, the Xarcon attacked. They did not run. They walked slowly because they knew they were safe. One Xarcon soldier walked up to a human tank. He pulled back his fist and punched the metal machine. The tank folded like a piece of paper. The humans inside screamed. The soldiers on the front line started to panic. They shot again and again, but it was like throwing pebbles at a brick wall. Commander Jax watched the screens with horror. His best soldiers were running away. His best weapons were useless. Suddenly, a face appeared on the main video screen in the command center. It was Warlord Grog. He was the leader of the alien army. He had glowing red eyes and a face made of sharp, jagged stone. Grog laughed again. It sounded like rocks grinding together in a mixer. "Humans," Grog said. His voice was deep and scary. "Why do you try to fight? You are soft creatures. We are stone. Your weapons are like toys for children. Give up now. If you surrender, I will make your death quick." The screen went black. The command center was silent. The officers looked at Commander Jax. They were terrified. "Commander," a lieutenant whispered. "Our bullets don't work. Our bombs don't work. We cannot break their shields." Jax looked at the map. The aliens were marching toward the city where the families lived. They would be there in 1 hour. "We can't beat them with force," Jax said quietly. He wiped sweat from his forehead. "We need something else." We don't need to hit them. We need to shake them. Jax turned to his officer. Get me Dr. Hideo from the deep mines. The crazy scientist. Get him on the phone now. Commander Jax knew that standard guns were useless against the rock monsters. He watched the red dots on the map get closer to the city walls. The soldiers on the ground were running away in fear. Jax had one final card to play. It was the strongest weapon humanity possessed. He opened a secure channel to the space fleet orbiting the planet high above the clouds. He did not ask for help, he demanded it. He ordered the Admiral to begin Operation Skyfire. This was a dangerous move. It meant dropping massive metal rods from space directly onto the battlefield. These rods fell as fast as meteors. They hit with the power of a nuclear bomb, but without the radiation. The sky above the battlefield turned bright orange. A loud whistling sound pierced the air, hurting the ears of everyone on the ground. The human soldiers dove into trenches and covered their heads. Seconds later, the earth jumped. Boom! The impact was so strong that coffee cups fell off the tables in the command center miles away. A giant cloud of dust and fire rose up, covering the entire alien army. For a moment, there was silence. The human officers in the room held their breath. They hoped that the Xarcon invaders were finally crushed into pebbles. But as the wind blew the dust away, the hope died. The purple light of the gravity shield shone through the smoke like evil eyes. The Xarcon army was completely untouched. The ground around them was destroyed, leaving a deep crater, but the aliens stood in the middle of the hole, perfectly safe. Their shields were not just strong, they were invincible. Warlord Grog, the alien leader, looked up at the sky and raised his rocky fist. He did not look scared. He looked annoyed. The aliens decided to show their own power now. They stopped walking and slammed their heavy feet into the ground in a perfect rhythm. Thud. 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 The vibration traveled through the earth toward the human defense walls. These walls were made of thick steel and concrete, built to stop tanks. But against the Xarcon gravity waves, the walls groaned. Suddenly, the metal twisted and the concrete cracked. The huge defensive wall crumpled like an empty soda can. The path to the city was now wide open, panic spread through the city of Terra Nova. Sirens wailed on every street. Civilians packed their bags and ran toward the spaceport, but there were not enough ships for everyone. In the command center, Commander Jax slumped in his chair. He felt a heavy weight in his chest. He had thrown everything at the enemy, bullets, missiles, and orbital strikes. Nothing worked. He watched the screen as the aliens marched over the broken wall. They were killing everything in their path. Just as Jax was about to order a total evacuation, a blinking light appeared on his console. It was a call from the deep mining sector. The ID tag read, Dr. Hideo. Jax remembered the strange little man who spent all his time underground studying rocks and earthquakes. Most people thought Hideo was crazy. But right now, crazy was the only option left. Jax pressed the button to answer. He hoped the scientist had better news than the soldiers. The fate of the entire colony now rested on a phone call from the bottom of a mine shaft. Commander Jax left the noisy command center and took a high-speed elevator deep underground. The ride took 2 full minutes because the mines went miles into the planet's crust. When the doors opened, the air was hot and smelled like oil and old dirt. This was Sector 0. It was a place where miners used heavy machines to break the hardest rocks in the galaxy. Standing there, waiting for him, was Dr. Hideo. The scientist looked messy. His white coat was covered in grease, and his hair was wild. He did not look like a soldier, but he was the only hope left. Hideo did not salute the commander. Instead, he waved his hand excitedly and led Jax toward a massive cavern. In the center of the room stood a machine that looked like a nightmare. It was not a gun or a missile launcher. It looked like a gigantic piston, a huge metal hammer the size of a building, aimed directly at the solid floor. Thick black cables snake across the ground, connecting the machine to a humming power generator. "Welcome to my workshop," Hideo said with a strange smile. "I call this beauty the Earthshaker." Jax looked at the machine and frowned. He did not understand how a mining tool could stop an alien invasion. "Doctor, the aliens have shields that stop nuclear bombs," Jax said impatiently. "How will hitting the floor help us? We need weapons, not hammers." Hideo laughed and shook his head. He picked up a glass of water from a table. He tapped the glass with his fingernail, and it made a clear, ringing sound. "Commander, your soldiers are trying to break the glass with a hammer," Hideo explained. "The shields are too strong for that. But if I sing the right note, if I match the vibration of the glass, it will shatter by itself." The scientist pointed to the giant piston. He explained that the Xarcon aliens were made of living stone. Their gravity shields protected them from things that hit them from the outside, like bullets. But the shields could not protect them from the ground they stood on. "Every object in the universe has a frequency," Hideo said, his eyes wide. "A rhythm. If we vibrate the ground at the exact rhythm of their rock skin, they won't just fall down. They will crack apart. We don't need to punch them. We just need to shake them until they break." A red light flashed on Jax's wrist communicator. A soldier's voice screamed over the radio. "Commander! They are breaking through the inner gate. We have 5 minutes before they reach the civilians." Jax looked at the massive machine and then at the crazy scientist. It was a desperate plan. If it failed, everyone would die. If it worked, it might destroy the mines, but it would save the people. Jax took a deep breath. He looked Dr. Hideo in the eye and gave the order. "Power it up, Doctor. Shake the world." Dr. Hideo grabbed the heavy metal lever with both hands and pulled it down. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, a low sound filled the underground cave. It sounded like a sleeping giant waking up. The massive piston in the center of the room began to move. It lifted up and smashed down into the earth. Thump. It moved again, faster this time. Thump. Thump. The rhythm picked up speed until it became a steady, deafening roar. The floor of the mine shook violently, knocking tools off the tables. Commander Jax had to grab a railing to stop himself from falling. He could feel the vibration traveling up through his boots and into his bones. The Earthshaker was awake, and it was singing its deadly song miles above the mine. On the surface, the Xarcon army was moments away from total victory. Warlord Grog stood at the front of his troops, raising his weapon to destroy the main city gate. The human soldiers crouched behind cover, waiting for the end. But suddenly, the Xarcon stopped moving. They looked down at their feet. The ground was not just shaking, it was buzzing. It was a strange, high-speed vibration that made their teeth hurt. The confident look on Warlord Grog's stone face disappeared. For the first time since the invasion began, the alien leader looked confused. He tried to take a step forward, but his heavy leg would not obey him. The vibration from deep underground was carefully tuned. Dr. Hideo had found the exact note that the alien bodies were made of. As the waves of energy hit the surface, the famous Xarcon gravity shields began to fail. The purple lights flickered wildly like broken light bulbs. The shields were designed to stop fast bullets, not a constant shaking from the floor. With a loud pop, the shields on the front line of the alien army vanished. They were now exposed. But the humans did not even need to shoot. The vibration itself was doing the damage. A terrible sound echoed across the battlefield. It sounded like ice cracking on a frozen lake. Tiny lines appeared on the thick, rocky skin of the alien soldiers. The lines grew longer and deeper. The aliens dropped their weapons and clutched their chests. They screamed as their own bodies betrayed them. The vibration was shaking their atoms apart. One by one, the smaller Xarcon soldiers simply fell to their knees and crumbled. They did not die like men, they shattered like cheap vases. In seconds, hundreds of invincible warriors turned into piles of gray dust and gravel. Commander Jax watched the video feed from the safety of the underground bunker. His jaw dropped. On the screen, the terrifying army was falling apart. The dust from their bodies blew away in the wind. The human soldiers on the walls stood up and cheered. They had never seen anything like it. The earth shaker was working perfectly. However, the victory was not complete yet. Dr. Hideo looked at his monitor and his face turned pale. The vibration was working on the soldiers, but something much bigger was descending from the clouds. The real fight was just about to begin. Warlord Grog watched his soldiers turn into dust, and he roared with anger. The sound was loud enough to shake the glass in the city windows. He realized that the humans were not weak, they were tricky. He decided that the game was over. He pressed a big red button on his wrist gauntlet. High above the clouds, the black sky suddenly opened up. The Xarcon mothership began to descend. It was not just a spaceship, it was a flying city. It was so big that it blocked out the sun completely, casting a terrifying shadow over the entire region. The human soldiers looked up and felt their hope vanish instantly. The massive ship did not stop in the air. It came down hard. It landed right on top of the battlefield, crushing the tanks and the broken alien bodies beneath it. Huge metal spikes, as thick as skyscrapers, shot out from the bottom of the ship. These spikes dug deep into the ground, anchoring the mothership to the planet's core. The ship was now locked onto Terra Nova like a tick on a dog. The ground shook violently from the impact, almost knocking over the Earthshaker machine deep underground. The vibration that destroyed the foot soldiers was not strong enough to hurt this metal giant. Inside the command bunker, the alarms were screaming louder than ever. Commander Jax looked at the sensors. "Doctor, the vibration isn't working on the ship," he yelled. Dr. Hideo was typing furiously on his computer. "It is too heavy." Hideo shouted back. "The ship has anchored itself to the core of the planet. It is absorbing the shock waves." On the screen, the mothership began to glow. A giant cannon underneath the ship started to charge up. It was aiming directly at the planet's center. It was a world-breaker beam. One shot would blow Terra Nova into a billion pieces. Commander Jax grabbed Dr. Hideo by the shoulder. "We have 1 minute before they fire," Jax said, his voice deadly serious. "Can we make the machine stronger? Can we shake that ship apart?" Dr. Hideo looked at the dial on the Earthshaker. It was currently at 40% power. He looked at Jax with fear in his eyes. "We can turn it to 100%, Hideo whispered. "But Commander, if we do that, we might not just break the ship. We might crack our own planet. The earthquakes will be catastrophic. We could destroy everything we are trying to save." Jax looked at the video feed of the city. He saw families huddled together, looking up at the glowing alien weapon. If he did nothing, they all died. If he acted, they might die, but the enemy would die too. There was no real choice. Jax let go of the scientist and walked to the control panel. He put his hand on the giant red dial. "Better a broken planet than a slave planet," Jax said. He looked at Hideo one last time. "Push it to the max, Doctor. Let's finish this." Commander Jax turned the heavy red dial all the way to the right. The Earthshaker machine let out a scream. It was no longer a mechanical hum, it sounded like the planet itself was crying out in pain. The air in the underground bunker became heavy and hard to breathe. The floor jumped up and down violently. Sparks flew from the control panels, and lights shattered overhead. Dr. Hideo held onto his computer, yelling crazy numbers as the power output hit 100%. The vibration traveled out of the mine, moving faster than the speed of sound, straight toward the anchored mothership. On the surface, the world turned into chaos. The ground did not just shake, it rippled like water in a storm. Deep cracks opened up in the fields, swallowing trees and rocks. But the worst damage was happening to the Xarcon mothership. The massive alien vessel was built to be stiff and strong, but that was its weakness. When the super vibration hit the metal anchors, the energy traveled up into the ship's skeleton. The giant vessel began to ring like a bell. Inside the bridge, Warlord Grog grabbed his throne as the walls around him started to warp and bend. The charging Worldbreaker beam suddenly failed. The vibration was shaking the delicate lenses inside the weapon. Instead of firing a beam, the cannon exploded from the inside. Boom! A massive fireball erupted from the bottom of the ship. Bolts the size of cars popped out of the hull and flew through the air. The thick metal armor, which could stop nuclear missiles, cracked open like a dry eggshell. The vibration found every loose screw and every weak weld. The ship was literally shaking itself to death. With a final, terrible groan of twisting metal, the mothership split in half. The two massive pieces crashed down onto the planet's surface, kicking up a mountain of dust. The impact was felt on the other side of the world. Warlord Grog and his invincible army were buried under millions of tons of their own scrap metal. High in orbit, the rest of the Xarcon fleet watched their leader fall. Their sensors screamed a warning: the humans were generating enough energy to tear the planet apart just to kill them. Terrified by this madness, the remaining alien captains did not stay to fight. They engaged their warp drives and vanished into the darkness of space. Silence slowly returned to Terra Nova. The dust hung in the air for days. When the survivors finally walked out of the bunkers, the world looked different. The landscape was scarred with deep canyons and cracks, but the sky was clear. The enemy was gone. Commander Jax and Dr. Hideo stood on a pile of rubble, looking at the wreckage of the alien city ship. They had broken their own world to save it, but they were still alive. From that day on, the galaxy added a new rule to all star maps. It was a simple warning for any empire foolish enough to attack Earth or its colonies: do not fight the humans. They do not care about shields. They will shake the bones out of your body.